One of the best kept secrets in the United States is that the Cincinnati International Airport is not only not in Cincinnati, it's not even in Ohio. It's in northern Kentucky, and nobody seems to care about this. Now, I was invited to do a dinner speech, a keynote, for a consortium of language teachers in the greater Cincinnati area, actually downtown Cincinnati. But they advised me, they said, John, when you fly in, you're not going to be flying into Cincinnati, you're not even going to be hitting Ohio, you're going to land in Kentucky. So we're going to send you, ready, a limousine. Now, for those of you who are not Frenchy, a limousine is the French word for van, all right? And that there would be a chauffeur. This is the French word for van driver, all right? Now, once landed at the Cincinnati International Airport, this is the most amazing thing. They told me that I was to go up the escalator to the baggage claim. Now, you people travel. Where have you ever been in the world where when you land, you go up an escalator to the baggage claim? Nowhere. There's always an arrow pointing down, right? But you must understand, 18 years of catechism, Catholic Church, all right? I do what I'm told, okay? So once I got there, I went up to the up the escalator, and they said there would be an information booth. And there was an information booth, and they said this is where I was to meet my chauffeur. And if he were not there, subjunctive, if he were not there, I was to simply wait. Well, as it would turn out, he wasn't there. So I stood next to the information booth, and the following scene took place. Shall we say that the information booth was manned by what I would call an indigenous northern Kentucky type? Now, getting a little sense for this, okay? Whatever came in your mind's your business, all right? You deal with it. Up the escalator from wherever you land at this airport comes a Chinese man. This is the God's honest truth now, right? Not a Chinese American. I'm talking about a newly arrived Chinese man who thinks he's in Cincinnati, who thinks he's at least in Ohio, and where is he? Kentucky. Right? So the man in the information booth, the indigenous northern Kentucky type, is reading a Louis L'Amour Western novel. Now this is the God's honest truth. And when I see this Chinese man and I look at this guy in a booth, I go, this is going to be good, all right? You know what I'm talking, because we're all students of culture, right? So the Chinese man stands patiently in front of the indigenous northern Kentucky type and doesn't make a sound because it's not part of the culture. He's waiting to be recognized. This man is not recognizing him, which is starting to bother me because I'm Italian and we have a very, very low emotional boiling point. So finally he closes his book and he says to the Chinese man, right? This is again, God's honest truth. He looks at the Chinese man, he says, "Happy." Now, evidently some of you don't speak English, all right? So I'm going to say it again, we're going to get a translation here, all right? He looks at the Chinese man and says, "Happy." Can I get a translation of that, please? May I help you, please, believe it or not? Happy, right? Miraculously enough, the Chinese man understood him, which gave me pause, because I thought perhaps in Beijing they have audio cassettes of indigenous northern Kentucky pronunciation, and people are practicing this. I don't know, right? So the Chinese man says to the indigenous northern Kentucky type, this is what he says. In his limited English, he says, "I need mop. I need mop." Indigenous northern Kentucky type says, "What the hell do you need a mop for?" This is all I need, all right? I mean, because again, you know. So I'm trying to control myself because this guy is so stupid, right? This poor Chinese man is trying, he needs it. All right, so fine. So the Chinese man knows he's not negotiating meaning. So he starts again and just slightly changes his phrase. He says, no, I need my apple. I need my apple. God says, What the hell you need to mop the airport for? That's when I jumped in. I got in between the two of them. The Chinese guy had never seen an irate Italian before. I don't know which scared him the most, me or this guy in the booth. And I said, just stop! Just wait a minute now. Look at this man. He's just flown halfway around the world, all right? He thought he was coming to Cincinnati. He thought he was at least in Ohio. He's in northern Kentucky. Look at this man. Look at the way, does he look like an international airport proper? And what he does is he randomly flies around the globe. And then today's your day. It's just because your lucky day. You're to mop your airport. And then I did what you guys would do, which is what any teacher, I took them through the vowels. I said, now, think about this. And the Chinese man staring at me. And think about it. Could he need a MIP? A MIP. They don't exist. There's no such thing as a MIP. How about a MEP? How about MEPs? A MEP? No. How about a MUP? MUPs must be very big in China. No such thing as a MUP. There are only two words that make sense in English. One is map. The other is mop. You're in an information booth. Why do you pick mop? You're probably wondering why I'm mentioning this to you. One of the things I know, one of the interesting byproducts of multilingualism, is that people that are multilingual are better listeners. They make better listeners because we have a whole subset of skills. Because we're accustomed to being on the short end of the stick linguistically. Anytime I interact with a native speaker of Spanish, Italian, French, I automatically sense the fact that I'm at a deficit, so I do double time up here. I intuit messages. I know that often the words are not enough. I've got to look for the extra-linguistic cues, the body language, the hand gestures. That's why I love the Italians. Always plenty of hand gestures. But the hand gestures, the facial expressions. You look for context, don't you? You look at everything. Why is it so important to be a better listener? Let me show you this, just in case you're not aware of this. There's some very interesting research coming out of the University of Iowa. Zimmerman and Brown. And here's what they're telling us, guys. They're saying that listening skills are directly related to higher literacy rates. Let me show you what they're saying. They're saying that people that listen for comprehensive, when you have comprehensive, look at, here, let's start here. It's not enough to just speak Chinese in your classroom to the kids. It's not enough. It's not how much Chinese you use, it's how much they understand. You understand what I'm saying to you? The people always say this, I use Spanish in my classroom all the time. Big deal. Who cares? What did they understand? And that has a lot to do with how you present your language, whether you use visuals, whether you dance, whether you use body language, whether you use art, whether you feed them food, whatever it is that you do to make yourself understood. Comprehend, once people understand, it turns into output of language. You see what I'm saying to you? Input leads to output. The only people I know in this country that are willing to talk without understanding, we elect. You can take that any way you want. Now look, input of language and output of language, commonly known as conversation. Conversation. Whereas most of the time people say higher literacy results are a direct result of reading, which is true, particularly if you're already literate. Literate people get more literate by reading. But a lot of kids that we have today, let's just put it this way, there is some literacy information that may come into question. What Zimmerman and Brown are saying is that what happens is that when most of the vocabulary that we own comes from conversing. Now that's an interesting thought. Most of the vocabulary that we own comes from our conversations. And if you don't believe me, ladies, out of the two genders, is there one that appears to be more conversant than the other? The average woman in order to navigate her communicative needs in the course of any given day, uses approximately 20,000 words. You know how many words men use on their average day? 6. Is it time to eat yet? No! 7,000. 7,000. Now, I want you to think about this. Again, take it for what it's worth. Women are using language at a rate almost 3 times of men. Right now on campuses around the United States, affirmative action is being practiced to get males on campus. Women are taking campuses by storm. They're exhibiting higher literacy rates. As the curriculum becomes more and more verbal, linguistic in nature, the women are rising to the bait. Now, to me, this is very, very important because in the end result, what they're finding, it's a whole different thing, is the fact that literacy is when you have input and output of language, it's conversation. Conversation is what helps us to acquire language. And quite frankly, without vocabulary, there is no literacy. Literacy really is dictated by the amount of vocabulary you have. That's really what it's about. When you get beyond the encoding and decoding, when you can match up the symbol with the sound, that's no guarantee that you understand what the author's written. It goes beyond that. You need vocabulary to guess at the author's intent. People that are the most literate are the best guessers. They're the best guessers. In other words, because they have so much vocabulary, in the end result, they can look at something, read something, listen to something, and say, you know what? I think this is what he's meaning. This is what she's writing. This, to me, is very important. This is why I want to mention this to you about the whole notion about multilingualism and the developing of listening skills. We are directly related to literacy. Directly related. Now, here's a letter. My son Matthew, my youngest son, when he was a kid, used to have a hockey card business. Right? He sold hockey cards on the internet. And as a result, he got emails from people from all over the world wanting to buy hockey cards. And by the way, today, he's a coach with the New Jersey Devils. So here's the letter he gets. From Kazuyo Jimbo. He writes, "How do you do? The homepage was seen from Japan. And the reply was taken out. Can he still buy it with the price of a price list of a homepage?" I'm wondering, who is he? Can he buy it? You want to buy it? Or is this guy he? Come to find out that they're writing in the third person, which is deferential treatment. Right? And then he lists what he wants, and then he says, although he wants to order the above-mentioned card from Japan, can payment by the credit card, MasterCard, be performed? If it can do, please let me know the method of an order and the total amount of a mailing cost and tax lump. Although it is trouble, please give me a reply. Kazuyo Jimbo. Peter Bychek from the Czech Republic. Hey Matt, I am sorry for delay. I certainly want discards. Matt, please let me know if you have next new cards, but in Czech change. He wants to know how much in Czech money. Czech change, he calls it. I am waiting until, with 3 L's, so he's really been waiting a long time. I am waiting until for next cards. I please you. I please you, right? So you let me know if you have next new cards. I will happy. This is a new verb, to happy. To happy. I happy is in the past tense. I will happy is the future tense. Happy is the command. I will happy when I have your cards and my albums at home. Please, you understand me? That's regards Peter. Now, what do I want to tell you about this? Here's what I want to say to you. It would be very, very simple for people to look at this in well-fractured English. In Spanish we call it Spanglish. In French we call it Franglais. I don't know what you would do. Chinglish, right? Chinglish, is that what it's called? That's classic. All right, now look, Professor Emeritus. Remember we're talking about error. Says, that's not true. It is not Chinglish. It is not fractured English. It's not Franglais. It's not Spanglish. It's something called interlanguage. And it is a critical stage in the language acquisition process. And to ignore it is to subvert the language acquisition process. This has a lot to do with error and your tolerance for it. But first you have to believe that it's a positive and not a negative. When kids come to us, they come packing a language, let's say for, in this case, the language formerly known as English, and the language you're teaching, which is Chinese. And in many cases, we like to keep the two languages separate, because we want no interference. We don't want Chinglish, right? This is what kids do. They move language one into language two, whether you like it or not. Just because you can't hear it doesn't mean they're not doing it. We all do it, don't you? I do it. I know that probably it's going to lead to an error, but I still do it. Because it's the single most common strategy used by people acquiring languages. And there's nothing you can do about it. If you allow for this, it grows like a fungus. Look how big it's gotten. Now, let me make this point here. Most of us think we're in charge of 3 languages. Improving their English, teaching them Chinese. No, it's not that easy. There's a 3rd language you're responsible for. It's interlanguage. It's a 3rd language. And that's what you're either going to hear or you're going to hear nothing. Interlanguage is the language you hear when kids are free-forming in the language. Let's face it, guys, language is not memorized. Get over it. Because what happens is language pops up in front of you, and you have to be ready to respond to the situation, whether you have enough language or not. Which leads to what? Error. And a lot of laughing. Correct? This is called interlanguage. You know who uses Chinglish a lot? Or Spanglish? Native speakers. When they choose to do it intentionally. It's in the same way like in fractured English, if you would. It's people that know better, but choose to use a variant of the language because it identifies them as a member of a group. You're just that much cooler. You are that much more contemporary, whatever, depending on how you want to look at it. But in the end result, moving language 1 into language 2 creates language 3, which is the interlingual period. Now I'm going to tell you something. I happen to believe that I am not fully monolingual. I don't know everything there is to know about English. Do you know everything there is to know about Chinese? Everything? Pick up your dictionary. You know every word? Every single word. Everything. You know everything there is. You're just the encyclopedia of Chinese yourself. So you're not fully monolingual. Are you? Are you? So then how can you be fully bilingual? You're not. You know what you are? You're interlingual. We're all interlinguals. We're all interlinguals. And it's a sliding scale. That's the whole thing. Some of you in here are really on top of your game in Chinese. Other of you are somewhere down the line a little bit in your Chinese. And then some of you are kind of down special needs Chinese. You know what I'm saying? But it makes no difference. You all get to participate. You see what I'm saying? That's what interlingualism is about. The notion of bilingualism implies that you are operating at the top level all the time. Basura, that's Spanish for garbage. It's not true. It's not the way it works. Here's the other thing I want to show you. Guys, this is a huge concept. If you can get your minds wrapped around this, it can really set your classroom off in a really strong language acquisition pace. It's the most liberating instructional linguistic philosophy that's come down the pike in a long, long time. This guy's been talking about this for well over 20 years. Nobody listens. And it makes sense to me. You know why? I can see it in myself. If I can't see it in myself, I don't believe it, because I'm a perennial student of language. That's what I've applied my life to, learning language. The Interlanguage is the first purchase of linguistic real estate that kids make. That Chinese that you're hearing where you're going, right? That is the starter home. That, remember your first house? Was it everything you wanted? Had horses galloping all over the place, an 8-car garage, and 4 jacuzzis replete with peacock feathers so you could tickle your significant other? Or was it something a little bit more humble? A fixer-upper, a handyman special, correct? That's what Interlanguage is. It's the handyman special. I want to make a distinction. Your kids do not make mistakes. They do not make mistakes. Your kids make errors. If you hear anything in your classroom, they're going to be making errors. And the things that you're going to hear, they're errors because they're inventive, dynamic, of transitional influence, and intuitive selection. It's kids saying, you know, I don't really know how to say it in Chinese. I don't know how to say it really in Italian. I don't have the idiomatic expression. So I'm going to create it kind of like out of English. Right? And then they're going to come out with something that's like, wait, what is that? But the fact of the matter is, it is intuitive. This is my best attempt today to use Chinese. And at the same time, let me ask you this question. I talked to you about risk-taking, vulnerability, and intuition. And you're all going, oh yeah, that's important. Yeah. Where are they going to do it if you don't allow for interlanguage in your classroom? Where are the kids going to take the risks? Where are they going to be vulnerable? Where are they going to use their intuition? See, there's no way around this. What I'm trying to do is create existential angst in you. Anxiety. That's what it takes to make significant change in language instruction. No one improves out of complacency. Nobody. I know this firsthand. I say the things I say because it's been a metamorphosis. Journey toward authenticity. All right, look. Your kids don't make mistakes. You know who's out to make mistakes? Native speakers. Native speakers make mistakes because generally speaking they know better and choose not to do it. 2 types of errors that kids make, but really few guys want. With a lot of languages, there's both interlinguistic and intralinguistic errors. Interlinguistic errors are brought about by the clash of 2 languages. Now, I'll give you an example. It's much simpler to talk about this with Romance languages and English. I'll give you an example. In English, when we're putting an object pronoun in a sentence, the object pronoun follows the verb. I see it. Right? Now, in Spanish, in French, in Italian, in Romanian, the it precedes the verb. Okay? So that's why you get in Spanish and in French and in Italian and Romanian, kids will say, if they want to say I have it, they want to say I have it in the format of English. Yo tengo lo, which is not correct, but you can see why. It's an interlinguistic error brought about by the clash of 2 languages. These are the difficult ones. Intralinguistic. When you have an error for which there is no corollary in the native tongue. I'll give you an example. For example, in Spanish, they have 2 verbs for state of being, to be. 2 verbs. Latinos are very complex people. Right? They have 2 verbs for state of being, all right? Depending on whether it's a permanent state, a temporary state, a profession, where you live, all these different things, right? Very difficult for a gringo to acquire, because we have no counterpart in English, none whatsoever. Gender of nouns. We don't talk about gender of nouns in English. Chairs aren't feminine, right? They're not. I mean, how do you explain that to a kid? All you can say is it ends in A. You know, that's so why? So it ends in A, so why? With Chinese, there is, it seems to me anyway, and I'm hypothesizing here, this is probably what is most difficult for you guys because there are very few similarities in the writing system, in the pronunciation system, in the structural system. So a lot of times the errors you're going to be seeing are going to be virtually exclusively intralinguistic. The kid wants to find something in English that correlates to Chinese, and you know what? It's not there. All right. Options for correction. You have two basic choices as a language teacher. You can either be the editor or you can be the applied linguist. Right? The editor edits everything. Edits the kids out of the classroom. Edits everything. Right? For the sake of accuracy. The applied linguist sees error as something positive and understands why the error is being made, which is a whole different thing. In other words, you look at it diagnostically and say, you know what, every year I've taught Chinese, I've had American kids making the same damn error. It's about time I got accustomed to this. In other words, don't be surprised, it's going to happen for the rest of your life. Okay? But in the end result, the editor sees error as anathema, and the applied linguist tries to understand error. That's what I'm encouraging you to do. Don't just edit and edit and edit and edit, because editing reduces the opportunity for risk-taking, vulnerability, intuition, and interlanguage. It'll kill your program. Language transfer may be the single most common strategy deployed by language learners. I will say the reason why these are important is I don't vary from these. Unless over a period of time, I find that my thinking was flawed. So when you have guideposts like this, guys, you're no longer the rudderless boat. You have principles to stick by. What are yours? What are yours? With you or without you, language will move toward standard format. You see it in your children all the time. And it's not imitation. It's self-selection of the appropriate form. I eat it, I run, I write it becomes I ate, I ran, and I wrote. How does that happen? Warner's Handbook of Basic English Grammar? It happens through selection process of the child. The child selects the appropriate form. Do not be overly concerned about linguistic fossilization, and interlingualism is our instructional target. Now, having said that, yes, that's right. That's exactly what I'm going to say. How would this sound if I were to sing this message to you? My name is Big D. Come here to Motown. Tell y'all here, we be getting down. We're the listening and speaking, reading, writing, rapping on Mado. Purpose of this here gathering is to open the door to other people, their cultures, the things that they say. Yo, respect will always lead us to a better day. Y'all's kids in Chinese, French, Spanish too, Italian, Latin, German. I know they come through by taking risks. Yo, I know. Times it is tough. Teach another language, dog. You gotta give it up so that they don't end up speaking some fake Chinese up and down. Just playing with those nouns when they ain't no one around. Don't y'all ever think, get too old, ain't smart enough. Just learn another language, G. It just ain't that tough. My special thanks to y'all homies for lending me your time. Because of you, my time right here done been so tight and tight. So long for now. Because it's time, dog. I gotta be gone. Y'all remember me? My name's Big D, and y'all just picture me wrong. Thank you very much for your